Okay, right. So I think we should get started then, everyone. So
Absolutely.
let's get cracking. So, safeguarding is what we're here to talk about today. So today we're going to give a little overview of safeguarding and what it's about, and how it involves us as driver and rider trainers. It's an incredibly important subject. And as some of you may already be safeguarding trainers, you may have done our course in the past, and or you might be thinking of doing, you know, enrolling on our. We've got a course coming up at the end of June, and there is a discount for everybody. So I will provide those details at the end. And as I say, it is an incredibly important subject. Some of you might be thinking, right, yeah, I think it's important. I think I got the gist of it. I'm not entirely sure. So you're on here to find out a little bit more about it. So that's lovely as well. So let's have a little look then. So first slide on here, the first bullet point. Um, I've put on there, you know, some content might be upsetting. I'm not going to be showing any horrible videos or anything that contentious, really. However, we don't know what upsets people. We don't know what triggers people. So I've just put it on there as kind of like a belt and braces, really. You know, I'm not going to be going into any subject in particular depth because it's a webinar today, and that's what the full course is for. So I will just put that on there just in case. So, okay. So with our ADI qualification process, yes, we know it's not perfect, like many other industries out there. And a few years ago, DIA flagged this important subject, and we said, hey, you know, why is there no safeguarding provision in our role? Why is there nothing as part of the qualification process? So we dug a little deeper. We got more involved with safeguarding. We got ourselves all up to speed and qualified on it so we could deliver it. And so that's where we are. And we're running it again, which is really, really great, really exciting, and really important. And it's something which is an absolutely critical thing for everybody to do and understand, because you know, anyone working with children, young people, or any vulnerable adults, um, you know, we've got to recognize our own role because we are working with all of these types of people. And so we work with, as all of us on here today have worked with hundreds, thousands of people in our career, and we're going to work with lots more. So we are inevitably going to encounter people of many different age ranges, and a diverse range of backgrounds. So, you know, as I say, it's inevitable that we are going to probably come into contact with a safeguarding issue sooner or later, just by the law of averages. So, and then, you know, what is a safeguarding issue? You know, how do we spot it? What do we do? So these are some of the things that we'll go through this morning. So what is safeguarding? So it's ideally reducing, I you know, ideally entirely preventing risk of harm, abuse, and neglect, and to support people by taking control of their lives and making informed decisions. So we need to do this by helping people to become empowered. We need to prevent where possible. The response should be proportionate to the risk. We've heard of the, you know, sledgehammer to crack a walnut. We've heard of, you know, things like that. We don't. This is the importance of doing the full course and understanding this subject really in more depth. We need to understand that, you know, what we might think with a little bit of knowledge about safeguarding, we might think, well, actually, you know, I think that's a safeguarding issue I've just spotted over there with this person. Actually, it might not be. So there is a lot of judgment and more information that you need to have in order to make that call sometimes. So we'll go through it a bit more this morning and on the course. And partnerships, so working with different people, professions, groups, communities, making sure everybody works together to prevent, detect, and report an abuse or neglect. So we need to be accountable for what we do in safeguarding. It is reflected in national legislation because it is such an important subject. Example legislation includes things like Mental Capacity Act, Adults, which is England and Wales, Adults with Incapacity Act, which is more Scotland, Mental Capacity Act, again, Northern Ireland, and there are different safeguarding legislation for groups of people. So there are children-specific ones, like the Children Act 1989. There's ones for adults, the Care Act, the Mental Capacity Act, the Vulnerable Groups Act, and other relevant legislation as well. So there's lots and lots of different types of legislation, and we don't need to know every type of legislation. I think it would almost be impossible to do that. However, a basic awareness of what these are, maybe where we can find them, is really what we're looking to set out to achieve for us as trainers, and just having a general kind of understanding of some of the main ones on there. My slide doesn't want to move on. There we go. Don't love technology. So who's responsible? So it's everybody's responsible. That's including all of us as driver, and if there's any rider trainers on here today as well. So again, as we see all these people coming through our door and into our vehicles and things, we are well placed to spot the signs. We are that additional set of eyes and ears on the ground, and we are in a really, really strong place to help identify and ideally report and stop abuse when we see it. So definitions, legal and accepted definition of a child. We ask what that is. Some of you may well know, but generally in the UK, it is somebody which is up to the age of 18 years old. But there are different laws across the UK for different age limits on different things, the age of consent, child protection, age of criminal responsibility. So there are lots of different age levels and laws which apply to certain ages in England and Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. So it is a vast subject. It is huge, and you're not expected to know all of that as part of, say, our accredited safeguarding course. But as we say, have some general oversight and information on that would be really, really helpful. So the legal accepted definitions of an adult at risk, according to the NHS. So somebody who is 18 years or over, so 18 is generally acknowledged as the accepted legal cutoff point between becoming a child and an adult. Due to a physical or mental disability, age, illness, or other condition that's unable to protect themselves from abuse, neglect, or harm. So this includes individuals experiencing or at risk of abuse, neglect, or exploitation, and those with care and support needs that makes them vulnerable. So they are some of the legal definitions from an adult at risk. With children, it's as we say, under the 18 threshold generally. So who are we training? Are we training children? Yes. Are we training young people? Yes. Are we training adults at risk? Yes. So yes to all of the above. So you can see why this is so relevant for us and our role as ADIs and rider trainers as well. So our DBS check that we have to do every 4 years as part of our ADI license renewal plays a major role. In 2012, the Criminal Records Bureau, so excuse me, a lot of us still know it as the CRB. It's just, we know it commonly as that, don't we? But it's the DBS, disclosure and barring. So in 2012, they joined forces with the Independent Safeguarding Authority to form the DBS. And so and that merger is aimed to streamline the process of criminal record checks and barring individuals from working with vulnerable groups, including children. So now the DBS handles all of the functions previously performed by CRB and the Independent Safeguarding Authority under one banner, which is the DBS. So that's a tiny little bit of background on there, and that's why that check that they do, the DVSA asks for us to do, is so important. So the Protection of Freedoms Act 2012 established the DBS, which processes these criminal record checks. and manages the bar children's adults list of unsuitable people to work with these groups. So the DBS will decide who is unsuitable to work with vulnerable groups, whether that's in a voluntary or a paid capacity. So some safeguarding issues that we may encounter. So a pupil might say to us, well, they've been bullied, neglected, or even abused. They might come to us and say something which make us sort of sit up and listen and pay a bit more attention. We think actually that doesn't sound right. I don't like the sound of that. So we might notice without them saying anything that something is not quite right. In some abuse or neglect cases, it might be that we've noticed that, for example, their appearance is more unkempt, or it's become more unkempt than it usually is. We can all have a bad hair day, we can all get out of bed and look a little bit, disheveled at times, but there are additional signs that we might need to look out for. Perhaps their clothes haven't been washed, or have they got any sort of marks on them? Again, these on their own don't always necessarily mean there is a safeguarding issue at hand, but they are clues for us to watch out for. As I say later, I'll say it later on, but it's more relevant now, that if we feel that there's anything going on, there are ways that we can, start to take note of that, and ways that we can perhaps explore that a little bit more, to see whether we are barking up the wrong tree or not. We don't want to start accusing somebody, or opening up a massive can of worms if it's not there. But on the other hand, if we don't say anything and we do feel that this is something which might be going on, if we report something, then we may well save somebody from being at risk of abuse or neglect. So it is a difficult judgment call, and that's why I say today this is an overview just designed to give you some ideas, but the full course will go into this in much more depth and much more detail, and you'll have a better sense of whether you think you should be reporting something or not. So we'll look at that. So safeguarding breaches by trainers. Now, this is an interesting one as well. So, just at DIA, for years we've been asked for help by ADIs who have been accused of some of these things. Now, some have been upheld, some of these complaints, where there was clear evidence that breaches had been made. Some are false accusations, or were false accusations, and some, fall into the categories of things like vexatious complaints. So one that is pursued, regardless of its merits, solely to sort of harass and annoy or subdue somebody, or malicious complaints. So raised solely to sort of cause harm or damage to the reputation of the person they're complaining about. Often they are without substance. So a lot of ADIs will come to us as part of their membership, and Sarah and I and Carly, our CEO, we deal with that, and we help lots of ADIs to get to the root cause, where we can, of the complaint. And some ADIs have been, removed from the register because of their behaviour, because there has been proven evidence that they have fallen well below the standards expected of a professional and trusted person, ADI or trainer. But sometimes they're not. Sometimes ADIs are receiving complaints where there is no grounds to them, and that's where we're there to help as well. But they're not necessarily all safeguarding issues. I did go off at a slight tangent there, but some of these points on the screen here they can be under the category of a safeguarding heading. So that's not good. That's quite worrying. So we get a bad apple in every basket, don't we? So in every industry there will be, there will be a bad one somewhere. So it's up to us. The more of us that are trained in this, not only to spot it with our pupils, because that's the beauty of the course. We do tailor it a little bit more towards our driving rider training industry, but it is for anybody in any walk of life. It could be your next door neighbour, or it could be one of your colleagues, or something like that. You know, if anybody that you think, actually, I'm not particularly happy with this, I don't think this is quite right, you know, you can then go through a little bit of a process and see whether this is something that you feel is, you know, worthy of reporting or not. So types of abuse, there are lots of different types of abuse, sadly. So we've got those ones on the screen now. I'm not going to read them all out. You can read them. And in terms of what another one that comes under the emotional abuse is a term called gaslighting, which, you know, has been around for a long time, and it is a form of psychological manipulation, um, made to made made by somebody to another, to subdue them, to doubt their own sanity, to doubt their own memory, to doubt their perceptions of reality. It's a subtle but a very damaging tactic that some people have used to gain control over another person. So people who are doing the gaslighting, they often deny that something has happened, even if it is might be obvious to others. Um, they might make the victim question their thoughts and their thought processes, their feelings, their memories. They shift blame. They make the victim feel like they've done something wrong, they've been at fault, or they're being too sensitive about a particular issue. And they might try to also isolate them. So it makes it harder for the victim to, you know, understand, get different perspectives from trusted friends, family, or other, you know, trusted individuals. And clearly, and eventually over time it will erode self-confidence with that person as well. So I've just picked on one type of abuse there, just to kind of and give another example of that. um, but we will have a little look at some of these now, just a quick overview. So sexual abuse, so when somebody's forced or persuaded to take part in sexual activities. So we've got examples of there, which again, some ADIs have been accused of. Some of it's been held up and there's been proven. So it's, and again, it's something that we need to watch out for in terms of our pupils. There's lots of ways of identifying things like that. And one or two of these symptoms, signs and symptoms, maybe don't necessarily add up to a safeguarding issue, but if you start adding some more onto there, it starts creating a clearer picture about what is, you know, sadly might be happening with that individual. So then we've got physical abuse. So when somebody deliberately hurts another person, could be a child, young person, or an adult at risk. So we've got being, you know, inappropriate restraints of locking them in a room, or being physically heavy-handed. I mean, you know, we might have all been told as kids to go to our bedroom and think about what we've just done or said. I know I was. They might have even shut the door, but you know, I wasn't held in the room. You know, I wasn't. You know, it wasn't inappropriate restraint. You know, so there are differences in, you know, from just a child being naughty, or somebody doing this in terms of a type of abuse. So emotional, psychological, as we said, ongoing abuse, maltreatment, or emotional neglect. So we've got some examples on here, and we've talked about another one which is on part of there, which is the gaslighting. So we've got different types of emotional and physical abuse there as well. And also it can be cyberbullying, so it can be online emotional abuse, which sometimes is you know, harder to spot. Financial. So when somebody forcibly controls another person's money or assets. So we've got changing banking habits. There could be some new signatories on the account. Money's moved about. A person may not have access to clothes or hygiene products or even food, because they're being denied funds. even to travel to college, maybe even their driving lessons as well. So they might become more introvert. They might not be socializing as much as possible, um, not showing up as well because they don't have any money. They've got no funds to do that, and things like unpaid bills. Some people in this, where they're cornered and they're under this type of abuse, they might be resorting to crime just to get, just to survive. So, it's that's quite a heavy subject as well. Self-harming, so intentionally damaging or harming your body or part of your body as part of a coping mechanism. So things that can contribute to this can be neglect. It can be a way of asking for help. Can be a way of saying I'm happy, but you are unhappy, but I don't know how to express it. There's many different reasons why people will do that. So people, ADIs, you might mention, you might see on like a really hot day, someone's got really long sleeves and they keep pulling them down, or you might notice, when we're on hand on the steering wheel or something, that there's some marks on their arm. And you've got to then make a judgment. You've got to think, okay, is it just that on its own? Have they just scratched themselves doing a bit of gardening, or have they, is this something, or the cat's got them, or something like that, or is this something which they're inflicting on themselves? So these are other signs, as I say, that we look into signs and symptoms in more depth on the full course, and that way you can add these things together and think, actually, no, I think that one's okay. I'm happy that I honestly don't think there's anything going on there. But if in doubt, as we say, always report it. So some other types of self-harming on there as well, which is fatigue, suicidal tendencies, marks anywhere on we sort of generally we think on the wrists or forearms, but they really in reality could be anywhere on the body. They could be very small, very hard to see, and including things like substance abuse as well, not just cutting or damaging or burning skin. So organizational abuse, so maltreatment from a person from a system of power, so people at the top of an organization enforcing rules and perhaps being unaware of issues of abuse further down. So un, unfair and very harsh ways of helping to control people, or even to help try to modify people's behavior. So there are some examples in there, such as foster homes or emergency care facilities, and as just one or two examples. But this can go on in many settings. So it's not just limited to that by any means. And then we've got neglect. So failure to meet ongoing failure to meet someone's basic needs. So we need food, we need water, we need shelter, we need we need warmth, things like that. We need as basic things as human beings. So there could be things like that these are things which have been neglected. Medication as well can be added to that list. So there's many other things on there that we could add. And then why does abuse go unseen? Well, that's an interesting one. Now, it could be that nobody's looking. Why aren't we looking? Maybe we don't know what to look for, or we're not aware of that such things can exist. We might live we might have been very lucky in our lives to have lived a life where none of this goes on. We're not just we're just not aware of stuff. Lack of care or thought. Lack of funds, so local organisations, local authorities cutting back on resources, so that's it's not being dealt with. We've heard lots of things in the media about things like that. Apathy, lack of knowledge, someone else will do it. I don't want to get involved. For many reasons, I'm not sure what I'm dealing with. I don't think it's any of my business what somebody else does. That's their family, that's their life. Who am I to get involved? All of these things cross our minds, and we need to, listen to that, but also with some further safeguarding training, understand that actually, no, that person could be suffering. Um, you know, Knowing that something's going on, we need to do something about it. Not many people will be able to just sit back and let that happen. And whistleblowers always perceived as being a negative, a bit of a grass, not generally good vibes from that sort of phrase. However, it is a really positive thing. And as I've said, if you are in doubt, you are not sure, you can't be 100% certain that someone's just scratched their arm from the garden, or the cat's got them, stuff like that, or they've been playing some sports and had an injury. We could all of us save somebody from being abused or neglected. So we've got to take our own perceptions and beliefs out of the equation and go with the facts. Perceptions and beliefs. What do I mean by that? What I said a moment ago about sometimes we think, actually, it's not my business. That's their family. That could be their culture. That could be something which actually I don't know enough about, and I'm not going to go wading in there. I don't know enough about it. These are all things which can be a barrier to us helping somebody at risk of, or who is being abused or neglected. Um, it's a heavy subject, and it goes quite deep, as you're finding out. But things like FGM, people might not want to report that because they think I'm not going near that. I don't know enough about it. All of these reasons that we've come up with, which we all think about, we all think, well, I don't really want to get involved with that. It's not my business. However, could we do something to stop it? Could we do something to prevent that abuse or harm coming to an individual? Yeah, we could do if we say the right things to the right people. Just actually on that last slide, I'm just going to go back as a true example. There was, and this is from our awarding body NUCO as part of our level 3 course. There was a true example that they gave that us as trainers could share with participants on the course. So there was a schoolboy, seemed to come from a really, really good family. The school teachers had known the parents for a long time. Everything was good. A teacher noticed one day he had some marks on his body in certain areas during a PE lesson. Teacher reported it. It was investigated, and they found out the boy was being sexually abused. The school called the police because they went with their gut instinct on this. This isn't right. So there are certain marks in certain places on the body which don't add up, which just don't happen. You can't. It's very difficult to injure that part in that way. And so they called the police. They went with their gut. They took their perceptions and own thoughts out of it and went with the facts that were staring them in the face. So and then so that boy was he was being sexually abused. So you might think, oh, actually everything's fine, but we're not going to see people getting changed for a PE lesson or something like that, but teachers are, and this is why it's part of national legislation now. Teachers will have safeguarding training, and us as ADIs, we will have things as well. It could even be somebody who's become very quiet, introverted, that was once quite vibrant and quite out there and engaged with everything. There's as I say, there's one symptom on its own doesn't necessarily add up, but you add a couple more symptoms in there, then you probably you might be on the right tracks with something, and it might be worth reporting. It will be worth reporting. So what do we do as trainers if somebody reports a safeguarding concern to us? So, one of our pupils might decide that they get on really well with you, they trust you, they chat to you or have done in the past. A lot of our pupils do, don't they? They tell us far too much sometimes. We need to get back onto gently persuade them back into the task of driving. But there are things which we do need to look out for. What if somebody reports something to them, or what if a pupil chooses you at that moment on that day to disclose something that's happening to them? So things that we must do. So we need to stay calm as we can, certainly on the outside, and we need to try and remain non-judgmental. We need to be supportive towards them. We need to assure them they've done the right thing by telling us and telling us about the allegations. We need to, if we can, seek privacy now for ADIs, PDIs. We've got a car, things like that. So we don't want lots of people overhearing any disclosure. So if we can seek a little bit of privacy, that's something we should aim for. If you're a motorcycle trainer, is there at your school, is there a quiet side room or something like that, or even outside away from earshot from other people? So listen closely. If they want to talk, let them talk. Try not to press them for more information, but make sure that our job is to preserve any evidence that they give us or they tell us. Document anything where we can, and report concerns via appropriate channels. So there are local councils, your local council, your local authority will have safeguarding reporting channels. So that's something which you could go off and find out about as a result of listening to this. And again, as I say, on the full course, we'll go into more ways that you can do that as well. What we mustn't do where if somebody discloses something to us is, keep pressing them for details, keep pressing them for more information. Tell me more about this, tell me more about that. They might not be able to, they might have taken a very, very long time to be able to simply disclose something to you because they've chosen you as a trusted person. So that can be done at a later date. We don't want to stop somebody mid-flow who's talking about what's happened to them, as they may not have the opportunity, we may not have the opportunity of them telling us again. So it's important just to stop and listen to them. We can't promise, so it's very common for somebody in this situation to say, look, I need to tell you something, but I need you to promise me that you won't tell anybody else. And we can't it would be unfair of us to us and to the person disclosing, that we would promise to do that, because there could be, they tell us we promise not to say anything, then it stops with us. We're powerless to actually investigate this. This is not our role. But what we can do is signpost, or we can find out and we can get them help. So we can't promise to keep secrets or anything like that. If there is a risk of harm to another individual, or risk of harm for them, inflicting harm on somebody else, then no one can promise to do that, and that would be wrong. We mustn't get involved with this. We mustn't, even though you get on really well with your pupil or your neighbour or whoever is disclosed to you, and you inside you're furious that this has happened and somebody's done this to them. We mustn't get involved with this. This is where we have to have a lot of restraint and understand where our professional boundaries are, and keep within that. We mustn't contact any alleged abuser or anything like that. And the information that they will disclose to us, we need to make sure that we will only pass that on to anyone with a legitimate need to have that. So it could be in an office environment or a fleet company. It could be a line manager, or it could be in our situation as in the ADI and rider training community. It could be somebody there, and I'll bring up a list of who we can talk to on the next slide. So what support is out there? So we've got lots and lots of support on there. I won't read them all out, but there's lots of places that you could do. So if, for example, today one of your pupils said something to you, disclosed something to you, and you thought, actually, I really don't like the sound of this, what am I going to do? Then at the moment, short of not going on the full course and understanding more about this, because as I say, this is just an overview today. It is a case of, you might need to try find or confide in a trusted friend, relative. It could be, as I say, your local authority. There'll be a safeguarding lead there. MASH, which is multi-agency safeguarding hubs. All those different things on there. DVSA, as you see, is on the list, and your professional membership body, so DIA. We have dealt with things like this. I have dealt with things and helped members in the past. It's not altogether a nice process to do, but we are there to support you. So you can speak to us as well. So if somebody is in immediate danger, common sense needs to rule here. If you suspect somebody is has just been abused, or they are being abused at that point, their safety and well-being is absolutely of the most priority. So if they are at risk there and then, we get on the phone, we call 999, we call the police, and we report it, and we get them help. If somebody is having an emotional mental health crisis, we can also do that. There is also a police non-emergency number, things like that we can ring as well. But if somebody is at risk of harming somebody else or themselves, then we call 999, and we get help to them as quickly as possible. If that happens, if we are safe being in their vicinity, their company, try and keep them calm, try and keep them safe. That's all we can do, but we must keep ourselves safe as well. So if you're not sure if abuse or neglect is happening or not, if you suspect it, but like we said earlier, if they're not said anything to you, keep talking with the pupil just in general, as we do. They may open up one day if they're ready, they may not. Keep a diary noting our concerns, patterns, times, dates, things like that. Now, the one thing with that last point is with the diary, if you do still have a paper-based diary, or on your app, if you use things like, I don't know, the Go Roadie app, for example, or similar, there might be somewhere on there that you might be able to take notes or just make some lesson notes. That might be the only place that you've got at the moment, because you haven't got a pen and paper. We never have one when we need it, or on your phone or something like that. If you do record it on there, fine. If you can record it somewhere separately to that, then do, because if this does go to the police and this does turn out to be a reportable safeguarding, or something that is valid and upheld, it needs to be investigated, then they will take that, whatever you've written it down on, as evidence generally. So see, always try to have a spare bit of paper and a pen ready, to keep it separate from your work diary. So you can, if we do suspect it, one avenue that we could explore, if they're under a social worker or other professional, or maybe even a teacher, if they are, if you suspect that this might be happening at home, then is there somebody else that we know that they are involved with in their life as a student or work, that we might be able to help them get in contact with. As we said, get somebody else's perspective. So if this does happen to you and you've identified something, it's a heavy subject and it's an unpleasant subject, and it will also naturally have an effect on you. It will be draining. So you need to make sure that you as well are supported, and you are getting enough support with having to process and help somebody. So again, friends, somebody trusted to you, someone really, really precious and really trusted for that you can confide in. It can also be, DIA help desk. It could also be DVSA. It could be one of many respected charities that specialise in this area. And talk through your worries and concerns. Get that perspective check from somebody else that will be able to give you that. So in summary then, is a really important subject. We've all got to have really good knowledge of this. We've got to be able to spot signs of abuse and neglect, and importantly, how to handle it if we do, and what to do next. Our driver and rider trainers were in very trusted positions, but we are also in a really good position because we are that extra set of eyes and ears on the ground for people to, for us to be able to spot these things. And as I said earlier, it is all about, yes, our pupils and our colleagues and our friends, but it also goes into our friends, our neighbours, our relatives, things like that. So it's anybody that you might come into contact with. So I'm just going to give you some information, because I've referenced it a few times today, about our accredited safeguarding course. So it's a level 3, and it's called the Awarding Principles of Safeguarding and Protected Children, Young People and Vulnerable Adults. It is certified by NUCO Training. It is on the qualification framework, so it's a recognised, nationally recognised qualification. The next course starts on the 27th of June, and we do 3 hours on Zoom with me, and then the other half of that course, same course, will be 3rd of July, the week after. So if you are interested and you are free on those dates, then that'd be fabulous to see you. And as I say, this one will be delivered by Zoom. There are 12 places available. Assessment for this, it is a pass or fail. You will have to do a written assessment. So this can be done in the classroom. Classroom dates will come out later on. If it's in the classroom, at the end of the classroom day, then you will have a written paper that I'd give you, and you need to hit a certain pass mark based on the course content. But with the Zoom, I have to do a one-to-one with each person, up to an hour. And it's the same question paper. I'll read it out and we'll have a professional discussion. So when you book the course on DI Academy, one of us will get in contact with you, and there are dates and times post-course, immediately post-course, after, within the days after, that we would then, you can choose one of those sessions for your assessment with me. The course has to be done within a 3-week period. So if you don't hit it, get that in that 3-week or the assessment, then we need to start the course again. They're not my rules, they're the regulators' rules. DI members, so £150, non-members £170. There is a £20 discount code available for everybody, which is the word webinar. And you just put that in capital letters, exactly like that, as you're paying for it. diacademy.co.uk is the website for that. And the qualification it doesn't run out every 3 years. Some you have to requalify. Such as the mental health first aid, which I'm going to be running soon and doing a webinar on that. But this one, you are advised to refresh it every 3 years, but it doesn't need requalification. Okay, so I've reached the end of my talk today. Are there any questions, Sarah? Is there anything, burning things that we need to try and answer? Let's have a little look. Sarah's frozen up on me. Oh, there you are. I think you're on mute, Sarah.
Sorry, I'm there. Okay, we had a couple of questions in the chat. One from Martin about how to deal with the situation where a pupil has mentioned they previously had suicidal tendencies.
Okay. So that one again, if they've mentioned, if it's ongoing, or if it's something which they've mentioned in the past, which they could obviously be affected by again, then can they get to their GP? Can they get the relevant help through those channels? If not, there are many different charities that deal with that. That you can contact, depending on what that's for. Things like, the Samaritans could be a perfect example of one of those as well. If you feel that this person is without capacity, or they've got worse and they're not able to do that, that might be an idea that you would contact them separately, speak to them and get their professional advice. I know that something in the news recently, and I don't think it's up and running yet, but I think the government are looking at introducing a trial of a few A&E mental health centres across the country. So that sounds like a really good plan for things like that. But if they are in crisis, which is the term used for, if they are really bad, they can't think straight, they can't help themselves, and they are so near doing, carrying out a plan or acting on it or part of it, then that would be calling the emergency services and getting them help. So
Okay,
yeah.
we also had a question from Andy who wanted the rules regarding cameras and recording your pupils in car.
Okay, so in terms of in general and in terms of safeguarding, so if you do have your cameras in your car, there are different cameras. There are cameras and no cameras, aren't there? There are dash cams and dash cams. So some of them just face outwards, either forwards or backwards or both. Some you've got the dual lens that face forward and inside the car. Some will, you know, a lot of them will, you can set them up to record what's been said in the car or not. We know rules for tests on those and things like that. If somebody disclosed something like that, a safeguarding concern, you know, that you feel is a safeguarding concern or something, and it's picked up on your camera, then you would need to download that and keep that as evidence for, you know, something and as part of your evidence. You know, that way you might not have to find your pen and paper in your door pocket. You've actually got something recorded on your camera. So it would be a case of following the procedures to get that person help and to report it, and also saying, look, I've preserved, you know, it happened in my car, I'm an ADI, the camera was filming, it's recorded sound, it's recorded us in the car and the pupil disclosing. So that would be extremely valuable evidence for somebody to have to help them on their way to get help. Hope that's answered it. Is there anything else? Any other questions that I've missed? Crime Stoppers. Not
Okay, another
like
question.
Oh, sorry, go on, Sarah. You're breaking up quite a lot today, Sarah.
From Lyndon.
Right.
Yeah, another question from Lyndon. What happened in their home country? Can you hear me? Sorry, Olivia.
No, I can't. Sorry.
Yeah. So
Okay.
Lyndon asked. Sorry. Yeah, I've got a really poor signal today. I don't know why. Lyndon asked, "What about or abuse that's happened in their home country now that they're here?"
That's a really interesting question. I mean, what our remit
Right.
is obviously for UK, for Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland. In terms of abroad, again, at this moment, I don't know the answer to that, but I can find out certainly. If we'll get your Sarah, are you able to get Lyndon's details, or just write the name down, and we'll come back to you on that. And that's a really interesting question, actually. So thank you for raising it. But yeah, my remit as the Safeguarding Trainers UK, and so yeah, I don't know about that at the moment. We'll find out.
What would an ADI do if somebody mentions to them an abuse and says, "This is confidential and I don't want you to tell anybody"?
Then, as I said, it's a case of you can't promise, because if they are needing to disclose something, and it's of a serious nature, along these lines, then you can't keep that. You just can't keep that, because if you, for example, you keep that secret and they've told you and you know about it, you'd be doing them a huge disservice by not helping them. They've obviously told you because they want to tell somebody, they want to get help, is the subtext of that. So we can't promise. So for example, then if they don't continue to talk on that day, they might talk on another day. They might go away, think about it. They might choose to sort of say something else, because you might not have enough information from them at that point to report it, because you don't know what you're reporting. So it might be a case, sometimes it's a case of just waiting, keeping a very close eye on them during the lessons, listening out, trying to carry on as normal to a point, but and seeing if they will disclose at a later date. Sometimes people are not ready to say anything, you know, for various reasons. So we can't promise to keep things secret because we need to get these people help.
Absolutely. Somebody else has asked, should we start a conversation if we notice self-harm or wait for them to open up? Can an ADI be accountable for not doing something?
Oh, that's a really good point. I mean, if you are, you know, like I said, on the full course, we go into more depth about all of these all these types of abuse. We've seen just a handful of them today. There are some more. And we go into quite a bit more depth into recognizing signs and symptoms. And there'll be way more things, you know, like diagrams of the body, what you're likely to see, and on what parts of the body, and you know, lots more things that you can see. And as I say, one thing doesn't necessarily add up to a safeguarding issue or any issue. It could be something else more innocent, might not be. But what we need to do is find identify further signs and symptoms of that. But if somebody, what was the question again? Sorry, Sarah, I've gone down a
Can the
rabbit hole in my
ADI
head. Right,
can the ADI be accountable
yeah, I mean,
for not doing
if
something?
there's people, yeah, I mean, absolutely. So, you know, if people, if us as ADIs in our professional capacity, or even if it's your next door neighbour, and you know stuff's going on and you don't say anything, you're just as bad by not saying anything. So we need to make sure that we are, yes, saying something, we are reporting it when we suspect there is something going on. So yes, we've got to report it.
I think that was about it. Thank you, Olivia. That was
Okay.
absolutely enlightening. And I hope
Oh,
very much that people are going to be coming along and doing the full course, because it really, really does make a difference having the full information and the full direction on where to go. So that's been absolutely brilliant, Olivia. Thank you.
thank you. That's cool. Well, I'm hoping it was, yeah, good information for people. As I said, we couldn't cover every aspect of it because today's, you know, it's an hour's webinar and it's an overview at best. But the full course, as I say, we will go into more detail. You know, we hope to see you as part of that. As I say, 27th of June is when the course starts. So you need to, and you will get a free like course booklet posted out to you, things like that. So and there will be a little bit of self-study that you'd need to do. So do you know, do get involved. If you want more information or you want a bit more of a chat with me, you know, we're on the help desk. Email support@driving.org, or email or just call the main DIA number. You can, you know, if you're not sure what option to press, you can ask for me, and I'm happy to. I'm usually on option 3 for help desk, so I'm happy to have a chat with you individually if you wanted to as well. But yeah, thank you very much, everybody, and you know, I wish you good rest of your day and week. And our recording, as I say on the screen, that'll be ready on the DIA Academy very soon. And take care, everyone. See you soon.